Welcome, welcome. Welcome to those who've joined a little early, a couple of minutes early. We will be kicking off on the hour. Connor, myself, I'll just address my hair because my hair's got sticky up bits at the back, which no one wants to see. Welcome, Connor. Welcome, Yano. Welcome, Imran.
Hello.
Your hair's looking lovely, Connor. No answer, no reply to that.
Don't know what to say because 9 times out of 10 my hair looks terrible. So I don't know whether you're being sarcastic or you genuinely think my hair looks alright.
No, I think it's a picture of perfection. Let's deal with the setup on our end. Let's get you spotlit.
I think it's genuinely because it's really hot today. Well, I say really hot. It's 27 degrees.
It is very warm. Yeah, I'm currently sat in the hot box of a shed, which should be really cool, but it's not. It's boiling. To move my seat up.
And
Yeah,
got my window open and now I've got a fly that's going around.
Oh, that's always a joy. Yeah, I've had wasp hell today. So I didn't put an announcement out today, which is much to my my stupidity. So there may just be a smallish group with us today, but that means you get to ask more questions and you get more time with us if you so wish to have it. But we'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll get cracking, I think. And what's going to be a new format? It's not going to be a watch party, is it, Connor? We just need to update our meeting invite when one of us can locate it in the depths of our diary. It's going to be something new that I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite a nice little thing. We've got some nice little things to share. I think a lot of things that I've spotted and I see on a regular basis for the.
To answer your question, yeah. So in the format that we're going to be delivering, by default, we disable cameras and we disable microphones just as our tenant permissions. It's a policy we've got set. That doesn't mean that if you want to sort of speak up, just pop a message into chat. If you've got something you really want to sort of say and you want to have a chat, we can put you on camera. We just keep it default because this is streamed out to YouTube and obviously we're very aware of people's privacy. So we don't by default make it you're all on camera because not everybody likes that. Let's just say welcome to a few people who are just joining us. Welcome, Janice and Murin. Lovely to have you here. We haven't started yet. We're just having a general chit chat. Where's everyone from today? I think, Yano, you're from the UK, if I remember your name correctly. I think Connor might have been speaking to you last week. West Midlands. Connor's neck of the woods.
Not quite Birmingham. Not far though.
You're basically Birmingham, aren't you? And Telford is it's Birmingham.
However, when I do explain to people where I do live, I do say just Birmingham and then go west.
West of Birmingham,
because no one knows where Telford is.
No, I mean it's almost on the Welsh border, isn't it? You're not too far off that edge, is that right?
About 20-30 miles, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm up in the sunny north, Leeds, where, yeah, like you, Connor, it's sweltering today. We're having a late summer, which is lovely.
Yeah, we're supposed to have this for. I was looking at the weather. We're supposed to have this for the next week, apparently. So yeah, nice way to close out the close out summer.
Yeah. Let's not say that we've got a bit to go yet. Hey, look, welcome and welcome, Renario. Lovely to see you back again. I'm sure as we start talking, there'll be a few more joining. But over the weeks, I'm sure what we'll do is we'll put a bit more advertising behind this to bring in a bigger crowd. But it means that today, as I said, if we do have little interactive parts where you want to ask some questions, we can spend a bit more time with you. But we're going to do something slightly different for those of you. I know Renario, and apologies, I always butcher your name. People have come to us on the Mondays in the past. We've done watch parties, which is where we'll pick out a topic from our previous summit sessions and we'll broadcast it and we'll chat about it. And that's lovely. But what we wanted to do is start for those hundreds who are joining now each week, just cast our eyes forward a little bit and just change the format of our Mondays. This will be a regular thing, certainly in September. And if it works for you all, we'll keep it going. But we're calling this now the Weekly Digest. That's right, Nick Connor. That's where we're going to go with this, the Weekly Digest.
Yeah, we have. For those that don't know, we've been running this for some time. We've been running what we call the Daily Digest, which is essentially our newsletter of interesting articles. Well, 9 times out of 10, what I find interesting. It's a process I go through every morning. When I rock up, I'll take a look at a bunch of different sources of blog posts and articles, Microsoft 365 related, and I add them to our daily digest, which goes out each day to our members that are registered for it. I don't know if you're able to bring up a
I'm just pinging
registration
out a
link for
link.
that.
Yeah.
But essentially, yeah, there's tons of like new news and announcements straight from places like Microsoft. We've got a bunch of popular blog posts and sites which we source a lot of information from, how-tos and stuff like that. So yeah, we kind of decided on the approach that we was going to share a little bit of a few of those articles, and maybe we can look in and dig into to a few of those articles that we think you guys will benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, we came on the idea, didn't we? Because we're always looking for ways to just showcase what value is out there. And the digest is a great, constantly moving target, but it's always moving. And we thought in this session, this will evolve, of course it will. But like for this hour, we'll just talk a bit about what you've been up to, kind of what I've been up to, just to give people an insight into what's coming up in the academy. But also we'll then have a look at the kind of the trends and themes that we're seeing in the digest to give people a bit of a, it's not always easy to get your head outside of your workplace, is it, and see what's going on, see what new opportunities are popping up. And then, as you quite correctly said, yeah, we'll dip into a few examples and hopefully there's some good tips to be picked up. Depends what we can fit into an hour. But the other thing I want to mention actually is if you do come to these on a Monday and you are new to us, you're new to the academy, and you have questions like, where do I find this? What's going on there? How do I work with the academy? How can I find content? Ask us here, and we'll definitely help you. And if we can't help you in the allotted hour, we'll spend some time with you after this call. So yeah, use it as a place to drop in and just chat with the coaches, really.
Yeah, one thing I always notice when I go through the daily digest is all of the different kind of sources where we pull out all these blog posts from. They're all kind of like racing to kind of share the same information. A lot of them, obviously, the blog posts are kind of very different, but they're all kind of when they kind of come through and there's a big announcement, they all try to kind of
who's first,
get on top of that and see who's first type of thing. So it's really kind of a really good way for me to kind of keep up to date with what the really big kind of trending topics are. And yeah, we do see those quite often. I think it's things like the announcement of I think it was Enter ID and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about it,
wasn't it?
Copilot's a huge topic at the moment. That's getting expansively kind of better. But yeah, we see a lot of things, especially when you've got a lot of these like big Microsoft conferences coming up as well. So you've got, I think, is it Ignite that happens in October? I know that they have like a big, I can never remember the names of it. I know that one of them's in May.
One of them has just happened, I think.
I know that I can't remember which one it is.
Ignite November.
November, is that, which one's that?
Ignite. Yeah, that's the biggie, isn't it? Where everyone goes to, I believe is it Vegas? He says having a quick look at the website.
But what's really great about that is about a week to 2 weeks before the event, I end up seeing a bunch of Microsoft Ignite announcements and things that they're going to be talking about. So yeah, if you haven't already, then I'd highly recommend registering for the Daily Digest. It's free, and you'll get a daily newsletter full of useful how-tos and stuff like that. So I mean, not all the information in there will be relevant to you. I try and pick things out for a very diverse audience. There's a lot of useful goods in there to kind of take up half an hour in your morning to have a scan through.
Yeah, it's always worth it, isn't it? And just to answer, just to echo Jarno's question there around, see, Copilot's been in the Microsoft stack, the 365 stack, like Power Automate and Power Apps, for quite a while now, like 6 months or so. I've not touched it in earnest in the Office products, but I know Fraser's just had his hands on the Windows 11 version, which he's been toying with, and he's written a blog post that I'll dig out. Now, whether that means it's into Word and it's into PowerPoint, I'm not 100% sure. But I'll do a little bit of ferreting as we go through. I know they have announced it, but whether you'll see it yet, I don't know.
I know you was having a play around with the, I think it was the development environment, and you had to set a US environment to get hold of some of the stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's a good tip actually, Connie. Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Yeah, if you have the ability to spin up a development environment, yeah, I know it is worthwhile as you go through that process. And again, I'm banking myself tasks to do it, to send some links. Set it up as a US environment, or you can, sorry, set it up as a US tenant, or you can on your existing tenant go and create an environment in the US. When you create an environment, you can select where it's from. Very often that will expose you to the latest features on preview, because they seem to come to the US sooner than they do to the UK sometimes, or they certainly do in our cases. So that's one worth trying. Let me just dig out the Windows 11 post off Power Platformer, because I think that was quite a good one that Fraser did, and I'll ping it to you.
Yeah, just while he's doing that as well. So that is our kind of it's kind of our spin-off site, if you like, from the academy. It's where we share a lot of our blog posts on powerplatformer.com. I think that's the domain that we're using. I can never remember.
Platformer it is, yeah.
Powerplatformer.com. So you can find a bunch of blog posts, and we're trying to write as many as we can on there. And so, again, some really useful stuff. I know Mark's been sharing some interesting stuff, or will be sharing some interesting stuff about his new Power Apps build that he's been doing with ChatGPT, which, I mean, he showcased it to me a couple of days ago, and yeah, it's a really good piece of kit that he's building there. Really nice UI as well, which is obviously a big part of what I enjoy about Power Apps. But yeah,
it's
really good,
isn't it? He doesn't touch development for ages, and then just goes in and does a fantastic Power App, and we go, wow. So yeah. I've just popped in a couple of links there. One for Windows Copilot, and that might lead you somewhere. If you want to try that, that might lead you to discover that it's already available to you. Second is a developer program. So if you haven't got the developer program, genuinely, I use it all the time. Don't ever produce products in it and then promote them to production. Don't ever use them in earnest, is what I'm trying to say. Use it as a playground, and you will, more often than not, get to play with stuff. So I was playing with Copilot and Power Apps the other week, and Power Automate as well, just because you can. It's just a good place to go.
Yeah, just on that Windows Copilot as well. So I think it's my belief at the moment that Windows Copilot for Windows 11 is only available if you are on the Developer Insider program for Windows, which is really easy to kind of join. I think there's a setting directly in your Windows settings pane on Windows 11 in the new control panel. I always refer to it as control panel, but I forget it's been changed now for God knows how many years. But yeah, it's if you go to the Windows settings, you can enable it there. I can probably show you actually just whilst
you do that, and I'm going to go and ferret around as to where they're up to with the Office Copilot.
Yeah. So if I just share my screen, I think it's this one. I know that might be a little bit difficult for you guys to see. You know, when you come into your Windows settings and you get something that looks a little bit like this, you come down to Windows Update. It's obviously where you can find all your Windows updates. But it's down here. You've got this Windows Insider program, and it's get preview builds for Windows to share feedback and new features and updates. So one thing I'm going to just kind of preempt is if you do want to kind of test out Windows Copilot, it's potentially not the most reliable build of Windows to be on. Just bear that in mind if you're doing especially like development stuff, and you've got important work and all that sort of thing on your computer. Then yeah, just bear in mind that it's not a actual kind of released version of Windows, this Windows Insider program, but it will give you kind of early access to a lot of the updates that they're kind of pushing forward. Because I've got a bunch of stuff to turn on, but essentially you just hit the join the windows inside a program, and there'll be a little bit of a setup screen that you can do. Then it'll ask you to like restart your computer and all of that sort of stuff with the new updates. But yeah, that's how you can kind of get access to it at the moment. I believe from what I've seen on the Daily Digest over the last couple of months, is that they're aiming to get this kind of production ready on the main kind of Windows release without being part of the Insider program within the next couple of months. I think end of October is what I saw as the pre-planned, but you know Microsoft are like, they're always changing things and could be released earlier or later. But yeah, we can expect that some good things to come from that as well.
Yeah, sorry, Connor, for cutting you off there. It's just like the Teams, the new version of Teams version 2, what they call it, trying the new Teams tab. When that first came out, like you said, it's not always the most robust product, is it? And the new version of Teams was missing a bucket load of functionality. So it's like, yeah, buyer beware almost when you first dip your toe in the water with these things. Just looking actually, yeah, so they made Office an invite only program, kind of like Bing was when you first could get it. Now I'm not seeing anything specifically which says when they'll put it into the preview options. Yeah, there's no solid timing yet. Now that said, one of the things I want to do, you've just reminded me, Connor, is I want to get in touch with Mark Cashman over at Microsoft to see if we can invite him in prior to the whole Ignite cycle to see if we can get some early insights into anything. I know they're all properly, what's the word? Locked
cautious
down
about sharing things.
Yeah, there's a phrase for it, and it's eluding me now, but it's the privacy. You're not allowed to talk about things.
I think I remember going back, we did try to I think it was Mark Cashman who was doing a session for us, and he's like, oh well, do we know when that'll be released? And you could tell that he was hinting that yes, he knew when that was going to be released,
of course,
but definitely couldn't share it with us.
Share it with us. No, Ignite gets the disclosure agreements, that kind of thing, that they have. But it's always good. I think we'll ask Mark in, and I will talk to him about the whole kind of Office estate, and I'm sure he'll know some people who can speak to us. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Why did that elude me? I don't know. Yeah, NDA. That's it. I mean,
Yana wrote, yeah.
Yeah, it's been one of those days. So hey, look, what you've been up to then, Connor? So let's kick this one off under NDA. Thank you, Yana. What have you been up to the last week? What juicy things have you got stored up for people who have been in the academy for a while or maybe just joined us? What's Connor got on his roadmap?
Oh, my roadmap, I feel like it constantly gets pushed back because we just spend a lot of the time multitasking around the academy, support and calls and all that. But obviously, I mean, the big project that I'm working on at the moment is kind of solidifying what the success path is going to be for Power Apps. And I think I will surface this now. Actually, I mean, if hopefully Yano doesn't mind, but yeah, we had a bit of call, me and Yano, talk about a few things, and he shared some really interesting things about the academy and a bit of the kind of the way people navigate through the academy and find the content that they're after. So yeah, I mean that's a discussion which we're going to be hopefully having with the team to try and improve the way the academy looks and navigates for our users, to help them get through a lot of the get through and navigate and find the content that they need to find to help them to kind of progress with us. Because yeah, we realize that we have tons of content, and trying to organize that into a really kind of suitable way to be found is a very big challenge. So yeah, we're definitely gonna look at and improving that. But yeah, off the back of that, obviously, I was talking to him about my my current success path, which I'm working on, and the other challenges that we've got in the academy as well. So for those that don't know, we're currently in the process of building success paths for all of the Power Platform services. Now, we already do have the Power BI success paths, which I think John's going to grab up on his screen.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's kind of worthwhile highlighting some of these. I have to just rearrange the screen a little bit so people can see it. Hopefully that's the main screen. But yeah,
if you're watching this on Teams and you don't see a full screen image, by the way, if you right click on his screen share and do fit to frame, and that should
good tip.
should allow you to see that side menu a little bit better, because I noticed it does that for some reason when we stream in this way. But yeah, on the left hand side, obviously we've got our success paths. You can see John at the top there, just hovering over the challenges, but above that and above the content, you've got the success path, which is the Power BI one, which at the moment is complete. We're working on some extra things with Jessica Jolly to get that extended out even more, and take you maybe down another Pathfinder, which kind of fits into the Power BI bill, if you like. But like I say, we're working on a bunch of other challenges as well. So I mean, I know John's working on some Power Automate stuff, and I'm working quite pragmatically to kind of get the Power Apps Pathfinder done, which is going to kind of cement the Power Apps success path. So yeah, I'm kind of diving into to components and all that sort of stuff lately, and building a nice challenge / course to get people through Power Apps components, which is a kind of big topic that people often forget about when it comes to building apps.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, you're absolutely right there, Connor. I think we recognise, as you know, we're using a platform which is brilliant in some respects for the social side of the work that we do. This is a platform called Circle, by the way. So if anyone ever wants to create community around anything, really, could be technical, could be non-technical, tap us up, because we can put you onto the providers of this product that we sit on top of. It's called Circle, but there are some downsides to it. And yeah, you're right. The bit I don't like is the content access side. I'd like to be able to go into search, go, I care about Power Apps, I want you to show me your courses, etc., etc. It's coming, but it's not there yet. So we've done the current best that we've got. But you're absolutely right, Connor. It's on both of our minds, isn't it? How can we help you who've just joined us understand what's going on in the academy? And you know, tiny step is just making these obviously different to each other. You've got your Power Apps Jumpstart. Jumpstart means it's the first step. Step up is the second step. They're numbered now, so you can kind of see them a little bit. This one, the UI Pathfinder, probably will do that at a later date, won't we, Connor? Because you're going to insert a components one. And as you quite rightly say, we've got a beginner Power Automate. And I've finished, actually. If anybody's interested in Power Automate and what it can do, I've just finished the step up for that, the second step. And that's going to be... it's really taking the idea of, I've used a use case because I think like people learn best, don't they, when they're actually trying to deliver something. I've used the use case of expenses, and so whole lists of expenses come in via forms, and you take those. But I've done loads of customizations on an approval process, lots of sort of branching, looking at the data that's coming through and deciding where to send different things, rather than just a default, I've got a thing, yes, no, you can have it. So we're going a little bit deeper on approvals in the step up, and Lord knows where we'll go with the final step, the Pathfinder. We'll have to figure that one out. But yeah, so I think that's a big project for us both, isn't it? And Mark and Fraser as well, is to figure out where we want to go with helping you access the content. So I think this area here, community, is quite easy to access for most people. They'll mostly end up at the forum, won't they? And if you haven't, I encourage you to go and have a prod around and ask the questions you've got in your mind in the forum.
Yeah, just on Yano's question there, he says that he doesn't see half as many as the Pathfinders and stuff that we've got. But yeah, that's simply because we are in the process of fleshing out and building some of these. So we get the kind of placeholders all in place for us, so we know where to put things, and then obviously once they're ready, we release them to you guys.
Yeah, what you will see will be dependent upon your kind of your access levels. And so for Yano, I know, for example, your oh good, I'm glad the numbers are helpful. Yeah, we talked about that. I'll address that other question around the step up as well. What you'll see will be dependent upon your level of access to the academy. And as Connor quite rightly says, if you've never bought anything from us, you'll see the community. As you start to buy individual things, they'll open up on the left here. But if you are a platinum subscriber, you will have a lot more in your left bar, but still you won't see everything, because as Connor quite rightly says, some of these aspects are locked until we release them, which leads me on to the step up in the Power Automate. It's done. It is finished. I've recorded it. I've got a little bit of editing to do, but probably no more than a couple of hours. My goal is to have it released in September, so you'll be able to go from the very simplistic Power Automate, this is what it does, this is why I could get benefit from it, into this process. Now I get Power Automate and I can really leverage it for a good, valuable use case. Yeah, my goal will be September, because as I say, it's now just about staging it for you and giving you all the quizzes and the tests and stuff so you can get your Credly certificate. So I hope that helps, Imran.
It's quite surprising that the amount of kind of behind the scenes work that goes on after the course and the challenges are actually made. There's a whole kind of process that Fraser will go through, making sure that platinum members have access and all of that sort of stuff. Making sure
You'd think it'd be simple, wouldn't you?
can get to the right place and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's not just a case of, okay, yeah, we're going to go build a challenge and share it with you. The whole kind of behind the scenes thing that takes place as well, which is why these do take longer than you think to kind of push out. But yeah, I think September's definitely a reasonable time frame for this.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And the other thing I've been up to is we had an unfortunate, it wasn't a cancellation, but we had to postpone a really good sounding, it's not a workshop as such, but it's an hour-and-a-half session with Kelly Edinger. It's around, it's sort of in the space of Power Automate, which is obviously, you can tell I quite like Power Automate. It's about contracts and statements of works, or any document really that you repetitively create, and the sessions showing you how to have a template with some pre-existing space in it to put information, so like a statement of works or a contract, but how you can combine a few techniques in SharePoint called content types, and also Power Automate with its ability to add data to document libraries in SharePoint, munge all that together to create this process where you can fill in a form with a few bits of data, and out the other end will pop a Word document or a PDF, doesn't really matter, with all that contract data pre-filled for you, so you can start to do documentation at volume, and you can insert approval flows and all sorts. But that's coming. I'm currently wrestling with that, and I'm currently wrestling with a bug that I introduced. Not a bug, I created a content type and I can't get rid of it. And if anyone's ever worked with content types, you'll know they're a devil to get rid of. So I'm working with PowerShell at the minute to try and rip that away. Honestly, I'm not happy with it. I don't like PowerShell. It shouldn't be this hard.
Yeah, I think I used PowerShell once to rename, or I think it was, no, I used PowerShell once to reassign an owner to an app, which I think it was like 3 commands. But yeah, I can't say I'd want to work extensively in PowerShell.
I mean, it's the language is quite rudiment. It's quite simple, really, especially if you've got access to ChatGPT. You can go, give me the PowerShell script for this. However, it's all the authentication that you do, because obviously currently it's running on my desktop, so I have to authenticate to SharePoint Online or use a service called P&P, Patterns and Practices, which is a community-driven set of, they're like routines you can run, but it's the whole authentication process to then go and do the search that you want to do is a bit of a pain. But yeah, it's interesting. So that's us, Connor. So what else have you got coming up? Anything else that you've got on your radar that you could share with people that they might find value with?
Yeah, so whether it's value or not, we don't know yet. It's very hard to tell with certain things whether something that we're going to produce is going to be valuable to somebody. So we're gonna go with the kind of what I'm going to call the pilot release on Friday, which is essentially bringing back. Sorry.
So I got re-excited because I've remembered what you're going to talk about. Is that word re-excited? Can you get re-excited? I can get re-excited.
I think you just get excited again, didn't you?
Yeah, let's get excited. Yeah.
But yeah, for those that's been with us since the beginning of the year, will be aware that I did a bit of a novelty build inside of the Power Platform, side of Power Apps. And I believe you can watch all of those episodes from my Friday builds that I was doing back then inside of the Platinum Exclusives space. But essentially, I was kind of stepping away from the kind of business solutions, the business apps, and stepping more into the realm of what do we call it? More kind of entertainment slash nuance, having a bit of fun, but whilst also learning about the Power Platform and how to actually build things. Because I think one of the big things with any development is if you don't need the solution that somebody's teaching you how to develop, sometimes that's not as important as the actual kind of learning process. Sometimes it's just a little bit hard to follow if you don't really understand what it is that you might be building, for example. So I'm kind of coming back at the end of this week with a new series on a Friday where I'm basically going to be building a simple, or could be quite complex, we don't know yet, a game inside of the Power Platform. And I've got a few kind of things in mind as kind of where I want to go with this and what I want it to do. Like, for example, I'd like to utilize some common things that we would utilize when building normal everyday business solutions and apps. So having some form of data source, perhaps in SharePoint or the Dataverse, for example, but really kind of tying in a lot of the functionality of Power Apps, the Power Platform, SharePoint, all together to actually build a bit of a multiplayer Flash game, if you like. Obviously not built on Flash, be built in Power Apps, but that kind of idea. So perhaps, say for example, me and John would like to play a game. We can go into teams, for example, and once I've built it, hopefully we can have a go at playing my new game that I'm going to be working on inside of Power Apps. And I'm going to be sharing every step of the build view on a Friday afternoon. So I think it's the usual kind of live times that we have here, and it's in the events calendar on the Academy if you do want to take a look at that.
It is. So because the live streams, they tend to go on a little bit longer, it will start an hour earlier than this call today. But it's the same time every week. It's I say 2 p.m. What I mean is 1 p.m. UTC is the time on a Friday every week in September. Yeah, I think that'd be fab, Connor. I think you're absolutely bonkers to try and build stuff live sometimes, but you just have a brain that you'll sort of absorb and you'll bounce around and you're quite agile in your thinking. But I think you're bonkers trying to build a game. But I can't wait to have a look at it, only because of the logic we talked about today. Like if we did a Connect 4 game, that would just blow my mind. All the logical things you have to work out. But I think it could be great fun. Really good way to learn, isn't it, when you're just toying around with stuff?
Yeah, I think again, for those that don't know, I spent a bit of time in Unreal Engine doing a little bit of development there, so I've kind of got the framework that's kind of needed in my head around building games, and I'm hopefully going to kind of share a little bit of that with you. I mean, it's very similar principles to kind of business solutions as well, in the things that you got to think about how your data looks and the information that you need to kind of portray between all of the kind of services and elements of your application. But yeah, I'm interested myself, because I mean I'm kind of going at this new build with the approach of I'm not going to research anything beforehand. I'm not going to go and pre-build it so I know how to build it for you guys. You're going to be watching me build it as I would build it from scratch, going through all of those design processes in my head, all of those data structure processes in my head, and hopefully you'll see some of the challenges that I face as a Power Platform developer, and how I'll hopefully, he says, hopefully resolve them if any do arise.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the problems. Yeah, sorry, Connor, I've done it again, haven't I? Sometimes the problems, the walls you hit, are actually where the biggest learning happens, and sharing that, I think, is a really good thing to do. Because yeah, you just get to. There's a lot of times I've seen people empathise with us when we're doing these things live, and they say, "Oh, do you know what? I've sat in my room and thought I was the only one who was facing this." And it's good to know that you're not the only one, because often Power Apps development, Power Automate is a lonely pursuit, isn't it? It's like one person. Thanks.
Yeah. No, just on that, you say obviously it's just one person, but I think we had a discussion as a bit of a team last week about potentially I don't know if anybody's seen what incredible app Mark's built over the last couple of weeks. But he's, like I say, he's built a ChatGPT tool for Power Apps, and really cleverly done. But obviously Mark's fairly new to Power Apps. He's got the biggest development brain probably going. Some of the stuff that I see him kind of pull out of the box in a couple of hours. But one thing that Mark maybe kind of lacks is that kind of some of the little nuanced things that sit inside of Power Apps, and he often kind of comes to me to ask him how to do things like responsive apps and stuff like that. Maybe fix one of his menus and stuff. And we've been often talking about perhaps utilizing the Git extension that comes now as part of the Power Platform in Power Apps interface to potentially start working on a project together. So that'd be something that I think we're going to explore at some point. I think it's in our diary at some.
It is, yeah. We're going to record it on. So we'll record it and see if it's worthwhile sharing, and if it is, we'll share the output. It's on Wednesday. No, it's tomorrow afternoon actually. Because yeah, you're absolutely right, Connor. The co-authoring in the Power Platform isn't slick yet. It's getting better, as we know from a session we saw down at Paddington. But for us to experiment with the Git extension, where we can check in, check out code concurrently, but also maybe introduce the Azure DevOps visual into the mix, which allows you to coordinate your work a bit. It's going to be really interesting to see what we come out with. We may end up just stripping back to simple Git commands, but I genuinely think that the way Azure DevOps integrates can make the whole process quite easy. So that'll be interesting, won't it? I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, I mean, we've been wanting, I know I've been wanting to dive into co-authoring for quite some time. I think since back in May, when both myself and obviously John here, we went down to Microsoft conference in Paddington. I think it was in London.
It was, yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the lady we spoke
was
to.
Feline Perrine.
Feline, yes,
yeah,
who did a really great kind of session. There was only like 20 of us in the room for this one, but yeah, she did a really great session on co-authoring, and showed us some of the possibilities and things that you can do in there. So it'd be really nice to actually get hands on with that in a real scenario, because I find that's often the thing, and often a place where I know I lack in terms of my knowledge, is I build things because either I want to build them or I believe they're going to be useful for somebody. I've never really kind of had a need. If I don't have a need to actually go off and build something or do something, then it's obviously never going to happen. So at least now I've got a real kind of use case to kind of dig into this co-authoring, these co-authoring options to take a look at and actually figure out how it all works.
Well, it does tie into our sort of stated mission, doesn't it? Amidst all of what we said around the academy, we have a central theme, which is build it, learn it, use it, enhance it, blue. It's our blue model for learning. The idea that you put hands on, it embeds the learning in a much richer sense than just learning off theory like Microsoft Learn or other tools you'll see out there. Doing a thing really helps, doesn't it? And I think you're bang on there. We've got the opportunity to learn it by doing it. We've got a question from Piano. Starting a Power BI course on Thursday. What license? Okay, cool. Do you want me to pick that one up, Connor?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, what you can do with the course, the whole success path, is go and get that developer license that I've linked in earlier, or use whatever. Yeah, probably do that, because what you can do then is you'll be able to get trials for first of all, okay, so the pieces that you need to have in play are the Power BI desktop. You can get that without any license. You can use it without any license. You just download it. You then, at the end of the process, want to connect up to what's called the Power BI service. Now, the only reason you need to do that is when you want to turn what you've crafted in the Power BI dashboard, sorry, Power BI desktop, you've crafted it. Think of it like your development engine, if you like. Turn that into something consumable by your work colleagues. That's where you publish effectively up to the Power BI service. Now, to a limit, you can do that for free initially. You'll get like 30 days where you can push things up. In the developer environment, it's much easier because you could just give people developer logins. When you want to start properly sharing Power BI data and dashboards with people, the person publishing will need what's called a Power BI premium license. I'll check the term. It's Power BI Pro, I think it is. I need to check because one's the big enterprise license, one's the $7 per month. You have to have that license, and anybody consuming your dashboards or your reports also has to have that license. So generally what you end up with is to publish and consume a report for 2 people. It's free to build it, free for a very short term to use it, but then it's about $14 for 2 people to start consuming it in a real sense. But what that means then is those 2 people, you can share it to a Power App, you can share it to a SharePoint site, you can share it to a Teams channel. So long as you've got the Power BI Pro, I'm going to say those words because then I've remembered my muscle memory. I'm sure it's the Power BI Pro license. You can access it, but it can get quite expensive, which is where I think the premium comes in. That's where you get basically Power BI at scale. Connor sent the link, so let me just go and see whether I was talking out my nose there.
Yeah, those links kind of highlight the different features and things that you can do with each of the plans as well. But like I say, it can get very expensive. It really just depends. I mean, for the challenge, obviously, to answer the question there for the actual challenge itself, I think you can get away with. I think for the jumpstart, you can get away with just your standard license, right? That comes.
So it's like I say, when you do the training, you don't need any licenses. You can publish up to your own Power BI service. You can look at it. The only point where licensing comes in for our courses is when you want to use it for real and share that information with someone else who's not you. It's only at that point that you step into the first step is a Power BI Pro license for you as the publisher and for the person consuming it. So if you've got a team of 30, you need 30 of those, unfortunately, which is where the Power BI Premium licensing comes in. It starts to give you packages, but as you see, you get into like 4K a month for departmental access to Power BI. And there aren't many ways around it, unfortunately. But yes, for the course, just use the desktop for free. Push it yourself, prove you can do it, see if you like what it offers you.
So if I connect to the Teams channel, everybody in that channel will need a license to view.
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, you can't allow access to a. If you think of it like this, when you've created a Power BI set of data using Power BI desktop, you've done a lot of number crunching, and what you've also done is you've set up what's called Power Query. So you've set up some threads to bring data in, to crunch the data, and to present data in a visual. All of that requires compute power. The moment you push it to the cloud, every time that dashboard is run, there's an element of it having to do those things. So what Microsoft want you to do is to have a license for those people consuming your dashboard to basically get money for that compute power. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, it's a bit painful. I've only ever really used Power BI in a small team context. I'm just looking down at the Power BI Premium. Yeah, I mean, for me, we don't need to go into the AI stuff yet. If you've got a real need to leverage AI, then yeah, go into Power BI Premium. But it's when you've got organizations and you want to publish to different Teams channels, you probably are looking at that per capacity license. But I'm no license expert. I'd say if you've got those cases, you find your licensing partner and they find you the best deal. But yeah, Power BI, I don't like because of that.
One thing we often also say is I don't think anybody is a pricing expert for licenses, because every Microsoft service has its own unique licensing that allows you to do certain things. And again, I think as Matt Weston highlighted in one of his live sessions that he did with us, it really all just depends on what you're using. So don't feel the need that you need to just go out and buy everything straight up because somebody's told you to.
Yeah.
Take the time to kind of figure out what it is you need, what you're using, what you're going to be utilizing, what your users are also utilizing, and then kind of paint a picture as to then which sort of licenses you need to start investigating and looking into.
Right. Yeah.
Because like I said, there's so many that I mean, I couldn't even tell you the price of a standard basic user for Microsoft anymore. I see
$55 business basics. It's lovely. You get loads, but you don't get downloadable stuff. To answer Jano's question there, exactly that. What I would be doing, to be honest, if it were my organization, my strategy, and BI was new, I'd be creating some trial dashboards and reports, and I'd be sharing it with small groups to see if the insights it gives me we could action. Like, we as a team, we're only sort of four large. We share our sales dashboard every week, but I just share it on my team's call. We did go through a process once where everybody had a license, but we realized, do you know what, they weren't interacting with it. So we get around it that way. And there are other workarounds where you can publish data without these expensive licenses. But do you know what? $21 a month for 3 people to access really valuable, actionable insights in Power BI, be able to click into them as well, which is where you're using this compute power. I think for me, that's a bit of a no-brainer if you've got good data and you use it. Opinion over. So, yeah, Connor, should we have a look at what's in the digest? We're like 15 minutes before the end and we haven't even had a look at the digest. And we can carry on, by the way, if people are happy to just stick around. You're very welcome.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share my screen again. Put it on another screen, so hopefully this is a little bit more clear and you can see this a little
Let me take myself off spotlight, then you've got a bigger screen to play with. There you
go. So again, if you don't see this full screen, just right click on my screen share and do fit to frame, I think it is. But yeah, so I'm just going to quickly highlight what this is, because obviously a lot of people receive the Daily Digest as an email and they don't actually come over to our site, which again is a bit of a branch off from our academy. This is today.collab365.com, and essentially this is where you're going to find all of the articles that you would be receiving as part of your Daily Digest email. So we've got a bunch of different tabs at the top. You can see we've got kind of what's popular at the moment, and what does seem to be taking off at the moment is a lot of Mark's fantastic blog posts on the Power Platformer .com website that we've got. Some really cool ChatGPT stuff that he's been looking at there as well. But if we look at, I think it's the recent ones, we can see stuff that's been posted over the last kind of day, and we can kind of take a look at maybe some of these things that have popped up on there. Now, there's a few that I've already kind of pulled out from Daily Digest. It's something I tried to do before this call, just to save me scanning through pages and pages of articles, trying to find something we think you guys would be interested in. And it's kind of a big kind of hot topic as well, because John's obviously working in SharePoint quite a lot recently, as he mentioned. But one of the things that we were looking at was this post here from, no, I'm not going to try and say that, but it looks like dbadgemecrm.com. But yeah, it's how to launch Power Automate Flow on the click of a button from a row in SharePoint list items. So we've all seen, I think, SharePoint list items. We've all worked maybe in SharePoint lists. If you haven't, again, it's just a very simple kind of list format where you can kind of preempt what your columns look like with different pieces of information. But what people often want to do from there is be able to perform certain actions, certain tasks on the click of a button. And this kind of blog post kind of highlights that. So I thought we could maybe take a look at this in a little bit more detail, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, it's just really convenient, actually, because as part of this thing I was talking about where I'm trying to craft, I didn't finish the story, actually. Unfortunately, Kelly won't be able to deliver the session as intended. So what she's offered is to help me understand what she's done, and then I'll deliver it, and we'll deliver it in October now. So I've moved that. But as part of the session, one of the things she's shown me is we'll have a document template and we'll have some columns in SharePoint, and effectively the columns in SharePoint in a document library and the document share the same data. So as I put data into that SharePoint list, effectively it'll write the document for me. And what she showed me at the end, she said, I'd love to spend a little bit of time and just implement a button to send that contract off for approval, which again ties into my step up that I'm doing. And it was exactly this that she showed me. And I think it'd be great just to learn how that piece of the puzzle works, Connor. When you showed it to me, I was like, that's timely. So yeah, let's have a look at how it hangs together.
So yeah, we'll take a quick scan through the blog post. I'm not going to read you obviously every single paragraph that's in here, but you can see up at the top here that it looks like the budget. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He's got a list, a SharePoint list named incidents here, and he's got his kind of standard columns. He's got his title, which is by the look of it, a single line of text. He's got a bit of a description. He's got a choice field here with different choices he can choose from to select his ticket status. But what he's also got is another column here, which doesn't really look like it matches any of the columns that you'd usually see. And it basically looks like a button that says update ticket status. So let's take a look at, I think, just kind of how he has, how he's implemented this and some of the formulas that I think he's used to take a look at this.
Just before you dip into that section of it, Connor, I just want to straw poll. I know we've only got a sort of smallish audience today. However, thinking about back when I first worked with SharePoint, if I say to you that things in that list are controlled by JSON, how many people, just give a yes or no, does that make sense to? I'd be interested in chat if you just post, yeah, I know what that means, JSON in SharePoint lists. I just think it's a really interesting, one of those that, yeah, so yeah. It's one of those things that when you start to work in the Microsoft technologies, JSON as a technology becomes kind of almost embedded. Yeah, it becomes embedded into your consciousness, doesn't it? And people just go, yeah, it is a language. It's a structure for yeah, we'll come on to that actually. Yeah, it gets you, and you just take it for granted. And I know that this blog's going to go on to go, oh, and I create some JSON structures to show this button.
So yeah,
cool, Matt. Yeah, okay.
So the easiest way I think to explain JSON is it is a language, but it is a predefined language. So what I mean by that is the way it works is you are given what's called a schema. This schema exists for everything in Microsoft. If you take a look at the Microsoft graph and really kind of dig into the API calls and stuff, you'll see that it's all JSON schema. And what happens with schema is they are kind of predefined things that as users we can utilize. Now, when I say as users we can utilize, we can go in and write JSON as a kind of direct language to perform things that we want it to do. However, with stuff like the Power Platform, behind the scenes, it's doing all of that JSON writing for us, and it gives us a nice kind of beautiful user interface to actually interact with. But essentially behind the scenes of every process that's happening in the Power Platform, in SharePoint and all that sort of stuff is essentially JSON working behind the scenes. And I think sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
I was gonna say what I think what the benefit of learning JSON is going to give you is exactly kind of what this blog post is getting at. So not everything is possible with the UI that's been given to you inside of things like SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, and that's where you often have to kind of look at more kind of custom built solutions, custom built things to get things working the way you want them to. But luckily, like I say, SharePoint allows you to do that with this sort of thing. You just said you wanted to mention something as well, John. I can't remember.
No, I'm just going to sort of echo what you said there. I think that's a really good description. It's like it's a structure that exists and underlies a lot of what we've got, but sometimes you have the need to just kind of pull apart this facade of user interface and look down, and below it is this language called or this structure called JSON. And if you can learn to use it, you can actually do some pretty creative things, which is where this button's coming from. Yeah, it's a really valuable tool to have in your little toolbox. So we don't teach it specifically, Jarno. We will often through the course of these show you places where we go and find out how to do things, but it's one of those that you don't need it for 95% of your life, to be honest. When you do decide you want something a bit funky, your brain just goes, I bet that's possible with JSON. And then you go and look for a session like this and someone will show you. That's how I would pitch it. So we don't teach everything.
A great session to take a look at is one that is in the Academy. If you do want to learn JSON, it's kind of it's a very useful case that I think she does. If you look for an adaptive card session by, I've got to remember who it's by. I think it was April Dunham.
I'll find
inside
it.
of the
Yes,
academy.
you're right.
But she talks quite extensively about how you can build adaptive cards for Microsoft Teams using JSON inside of Power Automate. And there's a whole kind of big thing about the schema that's used there as well. And there's a bunch of useful links. I think there's an entire tool called adaptivecards.io, where you can actually kind of build out adaptive cards and actually see the JSON that sits behind the scenes, which makes it a kind of really good starting point. I think that's before I just get into this this blog post, I might just try and bring that up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that for me, Connor, that was the bit where it started to land, because I mean, honestly, I've worked in and around the Power Platform for a number of years now, and unless you're a SharePoint, you've worked with SharePoint lots and lots. If you're like me and you've just used the sort of the no code, low code, you have little cause to worry about JSON. But when you do, this tool that Connor's showing is fantastic. And that session I've just posted, you can watch it for free, is a real good introduction to what we mean and how you can use these structures.
Yeah. So in hindsight, essentially, and this is going to kind of help us understand that blog post a little bit better, is let's just forget about the context in which this is being used, and we're not going to talk about adaptive cards. But essentially, it's a way of portraying information in one from, or getting information from one format into a format that is readable by one of these services, such as SharePoint lists. So you can see that we've got this. It's got the type. It's an adaptive card. But if you look at the things that are inside, they're essentially just column names, and then they're placing values after them, and they're separated by a colon. And yes, there's a bit of a kind of an array of a structure that's involved, but once you start again looking into that, it'll make a little bit more sense. But it makes it really actually easy to read. If you didn't have to write this yourself, they're actually very easily readable. So we can see that under the body here, we've got a text block. The size is medium. It's got a bold border, and it's bringing back some dynamic content, which is going to be the title from somewhere. And basically all this section here is doing is just surfacing. I'm not supposed to drag that. It's just surfacing this top bit up at the top here. So we've got this title up at the top here. It's got a medium, a font weight that's bolder. It's surfacing a title from somewhere, and you can see the kind of structure of how this is built. And it moves on like to kind of the next kind of section. We've got images, and you're defining what those images are and what they look like. And it basically kind of just works through in a sort of, like I said, a language-based format that gives you the ability to produce this sort of style, or as to what you're trying to actually build. So yeah, again, go take a look at this. This is adaptivecards.io. Again, if you're looking to do adaptive cards, want to learn a little bit about adaptive cards, John's just shared the link inside of there as well. But it's a good place to start if you just want to kind of figure out what your what the JSON kind of looks like, and you want to just have a little bit of an exploration with it.
One thing I would say, Connor, there is that bit at the top of your screen where you've got the picture of Matt Hiddinger and the text. You can, the best way for me that I use this was just to delete all of that and have one item, drag. So for example, from the left hand side, drag a text block into there. So maybe just get rid of everything else, and you see the JSON get written as you drag a text block. And then you can, it kind of cemented for me when I first did that. I was like, oh, right, okay. So that thing on the left hand menu results in that JSON, and I can control what's in the actual content of it using the right hand side, the properties, and it just writes it all dynamically for you. You can see, yeah, there you go. So you've got an image, and it's a person, and it's a profile image, and it's a small image. But you can play around with it with that designer, but it teaches you what JSON is and isn't. It's just a structured language, isn't it, to present things?
Yeah. So one thing to bear in mind is you can't just go in here and write JSON and see how it looks. This is specifically using the schema of adaptive cards. And what I mean by schema is every kind of JSON format that you have inside of Microsoft has a schema that surrounds it. And you can see this at the bottom here. under this kind of schema column name here. And if I actually go to this URL, what you should be able to see is a full set of what the schema is. And essentially, this is just a template for what to expect, or what the JSON expects when using different attributes of JSON. So you can see if I go and find a piece of information here, I think I'd be able to go and find, if I do a Control F and look for a button. Let's go and find, I think the first one.
That's a card.
Yeah, we're on it's because we're on adaptive cards here, so it's slightly different. Seeing if we can just go and find.
See, for me, what this does is this declares it's like a pick and mix, isn't it? It declares the entire box of suites that you can pick from, and then it's a case of getting the right suite with the right structure for the purpose that you've got, which is what that blog's going to go and do. It's going to go and pick from that entire list.
Yeah, but like I say, don't be kind of overwhelmed by what this looks like, because this is, you can just search for things and find usually what you're after here. But yeah,
there's a great tool as well, JSON Beautifier, which I'm just going to look for, which helps people if you ever have to touch JSON. I know we said use it 5% of the time. We've now spent 10 minutes talking about it, but it is a really useful topic when you start to dig into it.
Yeah. So we can see here as well that we've got an action here, which can be placed on things like buttons, which is open a URL. Tells you what it does when invoked. Show the given URL either by launching it in an external web browser or showing within the embedded web browser. And then obviously that action.open URL has its own properties, so you'll know exactly what properties you need to assign this if you want to get this to actually work. So for example, we know that it's a type of string, we know it's a URI reference. It's got a description here, but we can also say like the icon URL needs to go in there. So all of the information about that specific action, you can kind of see the format. So that's all it's really doing. This doesn't actually do anything when you look at this, but it gives you the kind of building blocks to kind of figure out how to structure your JSON. But yeah, JSON's a big topic. But yeah, because we've only got a few minutes really left, we're kind of getting to the end of it. I just kind of want to just highlight how this is done here and how he's done this inside of his columns. So if we scroll down a little bit, and again, I'm not going to read the entire blog post, and often you can find out a lot about a blog post just by reading the or just looking at the images to see what's kind of going on. But he's got this this update status column, which is essentially at the moment just a text column. But what he's done is he's gone down to the column settings of this column and gone to format this column, where what he's able to do is open up the format columns tab, where he's able to write his own JSON inside of here. So you can see he's actually using a slightly different schema to what adaptive cards were. If you look at the adaptive card schema, it's adaptivecards.io/schemas/adaptive-card.json, whereas this is looking at JSON schemas for SharePoint version 2, and it's the column formatting schema. So it's got its own specific schema for doing things directly inside of SharePoint columns. And all he's doing here is he's using a button. So he's using an element type of type button. It's basically going to update the ticket status. And then he's calling a custom row action, and his action is going to execute a flow. And he's basically passing in a little bit of a string here with the workflow ID. So whichever the Power Automate flow ID is, he's going to call that directly from here. And what he's also doing is he's actually passing in information about the specific item that's in his SharePoint list. So the flow will always then know or be able to take in information specifically to the item that you're choosing. So that's why he's passing in the ID here. But essentially, yes, that's how he's going to run a flow from within a SharePoint column. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post or paste that into chat. If you did want to have a go at trying to utilize this for yourself, but I will quickly show a quick example of how I've done something very similar inside of SharePoint, because I have done my own custom buttons before. And this is when I was working on a bit of a collection app, which is essentially just showcasing some videos about different topics inside of the Power Platform. And it's just a way of me just kind of keeping record as to where all my files were stored. So if I go into, for example, one of these in SharePoint, you can see that I've got my kind of normal column layouts here. We've got a bunch of choices and information about specific items. But over at the end here, I've got a bunch of buttons. And if I go and click on one of these buttons, or of course, I can't find my URL. Interesting. But essentially, that's going to take me to the URL that I placed in there. So if I actually look, for example, at this folder dropdown, and I go look at the column settings, all this is a hyperlink. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see that a lot clearer. All this is a type of hyperlink. That's how this column is initially set up, which basically means that whenever I add a new item to this list, and I go and find my, not sure why it's not in here.
It's the demo gods, isn't it, Connor? You literally just showed me this about 10 minutes ago.
Okay, we'll go with portrait and landscape for now. Essentially, again, these are exactly the same. These are hyperlinks. I can paste a hyperlink into one of these. And essentially, it's the formatting around the column, which is turning these into a button view. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and look at the format this column. And you can see that the column that I'm formatting is the folder column, which is this one here, this folder column here. And you can see that I basically got that same sort of formula, so column-formatting.schema.json. And that's where I've kind of figured out what the JSON was for this column, which is an A reference, which is what the element type is. So this is the same way that you'd write HTML for links. The text context is goto, which obviously is the text that appears on my button. And then the attributes of the button is the href itself, which is the reference that it will link to, is dynamic piece of content. So it's got this the pound sign and then folder. And what that does is it tells me that it's going to grab the hyperlink or the value that I've put in from my my folder column, and it's going to use that as the link to go to when I click on the button. And then what's really cool is you can also utilize CSS options as well. If anyone's used CSS, it's very kind of similar to the way JSON's written. And you can kind of utilize a bunch of different CSS options such as padding, borders and colors and weights and all that sort of stuff. So what I could essentially do in here is go and change my background color of one of these buttons. Hopefully this all is going to work. If I change this to 183 EC54, which is our Collab365 blue, I think.
It is. It's like it's cemented in your brain, Connor.
You can see that that button color has changed. So you can change all the formatting of the way your button looks in here as well. So you can add like rounded edges and all of that sort of thing as well. But yeah, hopefully that's a useful little topic, and I will share just for your benefit. If you did want to create links inside of SharePoint, that's the schema that you can use to get started with that. But like I say, you can click on that that link at the top of there, that developer.microsoft.com/JSON link, and that kind of give you an idea of how your JSON should look in context of its use case.
It's like we have quite a few sessions on governance and adoption. How it's all great building these wonderful things, but how can we help teams and people access the capabilities we've built? And I like these tips because really what you're doing is if you add a list here which just contained data on documents, and then you had to send someone else to somewhere else to go and get approval for that document, chances are they won't bother to make that extra step. So whenever you can visually make a step easy by doing a little bit of creative stuff in JSON, I think it's a really good idea. Obviously within reason. I wonder whether there's a performance overhead of JSON, Connor. We've not been into it that deep, have we? But I wonder whether it's got some impact with large data sets.
My understanding is that, like I mentioned at the beginning when we started talking about JSON, is there wouldn't be too much of a performance impact for it, because essentially JSON is what sits behind the scenes of these functions and things that happen anyway. It's essentially just surfacing the ability for you to be able to utilize the schema and the JSON that sits behind the scenes So I don't believe that there would be a performance impact, because essentially all of this information behind the scenes ends up in that format anyway. It's just being exposed to us.
Yeah, and to answer Sydney's question, I keep likening it to XML, which was okay, crikey, it's been a while since I've dredged this bit of part knowledge out. XML was designed as a systemized data transfer language, if you like, by a particular set of organizations. And I think in terms of JSON, looking at, I've just done a quick Google search for it. It's a similar idea, the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. So sounds like a group of organizations came together to define this. Might be worth just quickly researching it, Connor, but to define this language so it could be universally used. And I think from my knowledge, XML and JSON are two of the most common. So yeah, it's not like owned by Bob down the street. I think the schemas are defined by, largely international organizations who set versions of schemas for us all to use. I've always wondered about how that comes about, but it must do.
So just one kind of final highlight, I think, for this kind of topic is this is
this is great. Yeah,
this is the Graph Explorer inside of the developer.microsoft.com domain, and essentially you can run what's called API queries against specific things inside of your tenant, and you can see what kind of comes back and some of the responses that comes back. And this is really just to highlight that, yes, it is JSON that sits behind the scenes of almost everything. And essentially all I'm doing here is I'm just going to grab, I'm just doing a get call here, just to get my profile, some information about me. I'm running this query, and essentially what's coming back is essentially JSON. So we can see that we've got my display name here, and the value is obviously Connor DC. My given name is just Connor. I've got my mail or my email address. Again, this is the kind of column name, if you like. This all sits in tables behind the scenes. And I've got my email. It's all JSON that sits behind the scenes. So there is always ways that you can bring back information utilizing this. And if you're really interested in a hot topic, then I'd look at doing stuff in Power Automate and using Microsoft Graph inside of Power Automate, because you can do some really powerful things with access to this information in there.
Yeah, and you can do it even more cheaply if you put aside Power Automate and delve into Logic Apps, which is just Power Automate but run under a pay-as-you-go license. A lot of it gets a lot cheaper that way. No, it's a really good show, Connor. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully that's useful for those of you who may just cursory idea of what this technology is. I think all we're trying to do here is just open up the art of the possible a little bit. When you hit a dead end with the tools in the box, as Connor says, there's loads of avenues to explore underneath the hood if you really want to. And if you want to get really mad, then speak to Mark Jones, because he'll do some mad stuff. He can always find a way. Cool. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to share there, Connor, today? We have run over a little bit. I think what I might do is I might extend next week's to an hour and a half. For those of you watching, really interested whether that has been useful for you. Post into the chat if you'd rather us focus on less topics, or you liked the format. Love to hear from you, or drop us a DM, a direct message in the Academy. We'd love to hear from you. Equally, if there are topics you'd like us to keep our eyes open for in the Academy that we can give this kind of service to, then again, pop a message to Connor or myself, or pop it into this chat, because this chat will be open again next week, and we can evolve this together. I've enjoyed that, Connor. Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I mean, I've not spent a lot of time in Graph. I just noticed it's
great.
Off of this API, just want to point out, it's actually created me also under the adaptive cards. It's created me an adaptive card. So if I did want to use this as an adaptive card in something like Power Automate, I can actually come to the JSON template and it's got it here for me.
That's nice. So you could do things
the actual API call that I've made, which is cool.
You could do a new joiner to Active Directory, for example. You could post an adaptive card into Teams, into the Teams channel, and say, hey, Connor's just joined us, and you've got the data there for Connor already, haven't you, using Graph API?
Yeah, this is
that's cool.
This is great.
Cool.
I feel like I want to have a play with this now.
Awesome. So I'm just reading the messages now. So good. I'm glad, Marius, you enjoyed it. Thank you, Imran. Sydney, think of the word skydive. Country and touching. I shall digest what that means in a moment. Yes, I did see you on YouTube, Hermine. Oh, sorry if I butchered your name as well, Hermine. On YouTube, it came into the Teams meeting. Yeah, great. Fairy Geek Mother. I thought it was you. I recognised the picture. But yeah, thanks everyone. That's been really good fun. Really enjoyed that, and we'll see you same time again. Well, first of all, see Connor on Friday because he's going to build some games. 1 p.m. UTC. But we'll all be back here same time, 2 p.m. UTC next Monday, and we'll do more of this. But it is free on YouTube to go and rewatch if you're interested in anything we've shown you today. Yeah, cheers, Connor. Thank you for your
Awesome.
demos.
Thanks for sharing the afternoon with me, John.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. I can now go and open the door and get some actual air into this room because it's blooming boiling.
28 degrees now. It's gone up a degree.
Yeah, it's warming it. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you soon.